What would you do if someone publicly disrespected you in front of your entire industry while offering you $500 million? Most people would swallow their pride and sign the deal. But not her. This is the story of a black woman CEO who walked away from a fortune, not because she couldn't win, but because she refused to lose her dignity. And what she did next left the business world shaken. Her name was Ava Johnson, and she was no stranger to adversity. Born and raised in a working-class neighborhood in Atlanta, Ava was the kind of person who refused to be defined by her circumstances. Her mother worked two jobs, a nurse and a cashier, and her father had been laid off when she was just 8 years old. Ava learned early what it meant to hustle. But more than that, she learned how to lead. By the time she was in high school, Ava had started a tutoring club, a clothing resale hustle, and even managed to code her first website, all while keeping a near-perfect GPA. She earned a full scholarship to Spelman College, then went on to MIT for grad school. That's where she first had the idea for Nexera, a fintech platform designed to serve communities that traditional banking ignored. While major financial institutions were racing to serve billionaires and startups, Ava noticed the gap. Everyday people in underserved communities had no access to smart, digital financial tools. No easy credit management, no savings automation, no investment literacy, nothing built for them. So she built it, and she didn't wait for permission. She launched Nexera with a tiny team of 3 developers and a borrowed office space in downtown Atlanta. They coded by day, pitched by night, and begged every investor who would take a meeting. And most didn't. Let's be honest. A young black woman pitching a fintech startup didn't exactly scream, "safe bet," to the old-school venture capitalists on Sand Hill Road. She heard it all. "Do you have a male co-founder? You'd be a great diversity hire at our fund, but we're not ready to invest. This space is just too crowded." But she pushed anyway. For every door that closed, Ava found a window, and when even the windows were locked, she built her own damn building. After a series of rejections, one local Atlanta investor, a black angel investor named Marcus Lane, took a chance on her with a $50,000 seed check. It wasn't much, but it was enough. With that, Ava launched Nexera's beta platform, and it took off. By year 2, Nexera had 100,000 active users. By year 3, major banks were trying to partner with them. Ava kept control of her company and stayed laser-focused on her mission: economic justice through technology. Media outlets started calling her the Black Tech Titan. She was featured on the cover of Fast Company, named one of Forbes 30 Under 30, and invited to speak at Davos. But through it all, Ava remained grounded. Her office still had handwritten notes from her mother taped to the wall. "Remember why you started." By year 6, Nexera had reached over 10 million users, including small business owners, students, single mothers, and retirees. Communities once overlooked were finally getting access to real tools for building wealth. That's when the Fairchild family came knocking. The Fairchilds were everything Ava wasn't. Old money, ultra-connected, billionaire lineage. Owners of a massive financial empire with deep roots in American banking, private equity, and political influence. They were the kind of family that owned skyscrapers and politicians. They had watched Nexera grow and saw an opportunity. A fast-moving, mission-driven startup with massive user engagement and cultural influence. In the wrong hands, it could be watered down, commercialized, and stripped of its soul. But the Fairchilds didn't care about that. They cared about numbers. They offered Ava a deal, $500 million to acquire Nexera, with her staying on as CEO for 2 years under a transition plan. To most people, this would be a dream come true. $500 million. Instant legacy. But Ava hesitated. She didn't trust them, not fully. She'd heard whispers in the industry about their ruthless tactics, and she knew what it meant to hand your life's work to people who never truly understood your mission. Still, Ava agreed to meet in person, to sit down and see if there was any room for alignment. If there was a chance they'd respect the mission, maybe she could protect Nexera's soul from the inside. The meeting was set in Manhattan, at the Fairchild Group's private boardroom, a penthouse suite with million-dollar art on the walls and champagne already poured. What was supposed to be a negotiation turned into something far uglier. And in the next section, you'll see exactly what happened in that room and why Ava made the boldest move of her career. Ava Johnson arrived at the Fairchild Group's Manhattan headquarters dressed in a tailored navy blue power suit. No entourage, no pretense, just her, a sleek tablet with key figures, and the confidence of a woman who knew exactly what she'd built. She'd been in boardrooms before, but this felt different. The air was heavier, the walls taller. Every corner of the Fairchild boardroom screamed power, from the glass sculptures lining the hallways to the oil paintings of past chairmen, all white men, staring down like judges in a private court. When she stepped inside the room, there they were, the Fairchilds. 3 generations of wealth seated around an Italian marble table. At the head sat Jameson Fairchild, the current CEO, sharp suit, colder smile. Beside him, his 2 sons, Preston and Beau, both managing partners. They barely stood as Ava walked in. A glass of still water was slid toward her. No welcome, no small talk, just silence. Then Jameson spoke. "Let's be efficient, Ms. Johnson. We've reviewed your numbers, your growth curve, and your market traction. It's impressive for a grassroots platform." That word, grassroots, hung in the air like an insult disguised as praise. Ava nodded, unfazed. She presented Nexra's growth, engagement, and community impact. She made it clear that the mission wasn't optional, that Nexra's success was built on trust and accessibility. If they wanted in, they needed to respect that. And then came Preston Fairchild's smirk. "Right, but what we're offering is structure, discipline, the kind of leadership Nexra hasn't had before." Ava blinked. "Excuse me?" "Let's be honest," Preston continued. "Your platform's done well, but we can bring real business experience. You've got community energy, we bring scale." Community energy. That was the moment Ava realized they didn't see her as a CEO. They saw her as a placeholder, a temporary face until they could swap her out and rebrand Nexra as just another product in their empire. Beau chimed in next, with a laugh that didn't belong in a professional setting. "Look, we've all seen the headlines. Black woman CEO revolutionizing fintech. Great PR. But you're not seriously telling us you plan to run a global financial firm long-term, are you?" Silence. Ava glanced around the table. No one spoke up, not even Jameson. The disrespect was loud and intentional. She leaned forward. "Let me be very clear," she said. "Nexra didn't succeed in spite of me. It succeeded because of me, and the communities we serve are the reason it works. If you think I'm just a PR face, you've missed the entire point." Jameson smiled tightly. "We respect your passion, but emotions don't build empires. We do." That was it. Ava stood. She didn't need to hear another word. She'd walked into that room, hoping to negotiate with potential partners. What she found instead was a group of men, so used to being on top, they couldn't see anyone else as worthy of standing beside them, especially a black woman who'd built something they couldn't control. Before walking out, she delivered one final line. "You don't understand my company. You don't understand my mission. And clearly, you don't understand who you're speaking to. Deal's off." And just like that, she walked out, leaving $500 million on the table. The Fairchilds didn't chase her. They didn't need to. In their minds, she just made a foolish, emotional decision. But what they didn't realize was, Ava wasn't walking away from power. She was walking back to it. The moment Ava Johnson walked out of that boardroom, she didn't just walk away from a deal. She walked straight into a media firestorm. News of the failed acquisition leaked within 24 hours. At first, it was whispers. Sources say the Nexra Fairchild deal fell through. Insider reports suggest creative differences between Ava Johnson and the Fairchild Group. Could Nexra be too unstructured for a major acquisition? But Ava stayed silent. She didn't release a statement, didn't tweet, didn't take interviews. She simply returned to Atlanta, walked into her office, and kept building, with her head high and her principles intact. But when the truth finally surfaced, the world took notice. 1 week later, a junior executive at the Fairchild Group, a woman who had sat in on that very meeting, leaked an internal memo and audio clip of the conversation. And it was damning. The memo detailed how the Fairchild board had serious concerns about placing long-term operational control in the hands of a founder with an activist image and limited legacy experience. The audio? Even worse. It captured Preston Fairchild's voice mocking Ava's leadership and saying, "We don't need a community organizer pretending to be a CEO." When that clip hit social media, it was like gasoline on a fire. The internet erupted. Hashtag #StandWithAva started trending on X, formerly Twitter. LinkedIn was flooded with posts praising her for choosing integrity over income. TikTok creators were stitching the clip, pointing out how often Black women in leadership are undermined, no matter how successful they are. One video went viral with over 12 million views in 2 days, featuring Ava's silent walk out of the Fairchild building synced to a Beyoncé track. The caption read, "She didn't fold. She didn't flinch. She walked TF out." Journalists from the New York Times, The Guardian, and TechCrunch scrambled for quotes. Nextra's press inbox flooded with media requests, investors, and brand partnerships. Public figures began weighing in. Issa Rae tweeted, "Ava Johnson is her. Black women don't need your boardroom validation." Killer Mike, an Atlanta entrepreneur and activist, posted, "She turned down $500 million to keep her mission pure. That's real power." Even Oprah shared a post saying, "Dignity is worth more than any dollar amount." Ava Johnson just showed the world what leadership looks like. The Fairchilds, on the other hand, went quiet, then defensive, then scrambling. They released a bland statement calling the leaked comments taken out of context and said they remained committed to diversity and inclusion. But it was too late. Collision Ava became a symbol, but she never asked to be. In her first public appearance since the fallout, Ava was invited to speak at a Women in Business Summit in Washington, D.C. The auditorium was packed. She walked on stage to a standing ovation. Her words were calm, direct, and unforgettable. We talk a lot about representation, but it's not just about being in the room. It's about being respected in that room. When I realized the people across that table didn't see me as a leader, I knew the deal was already dead. And that's okay, because I didn't come this far to be anyone's mascot. I came to build. The crowd roared. From that moment on, Ava wasn't just a CEO, she was a movement. Nextra's user base skyrocketed. New customers poured in daily, many of them saying they joined just to support what she stood for. Her story became case study material in business schools and featured in leadership forums around the world. Even investors who once passed on her were now begging to get in. But Ava didn't just ride the wave, she redirected it. Instead of cashing in, she launched a new initiative, Nextra Uplift, a $25 million fund dedicated to helping women of color launch and scale tech ventures. She announced the program in a viral video titled, "Power Over Profits." The Fairchilds? Their reputation took a major hit. One of the brothers resigned from the board under pressure. Their firm lost 2 major diversity-based contracts, and multiple startups pulled out of pending deals. For the first time in decades, the billionaires realized there were consequences for disrespect, especially when the world was watching. Ava Johnson didn't pause. While the media dissected every second of her boardroom exit and social media crowned her the new face of ethical leadership, she stayed focused. The attention was loud, but she knew attention was temporary. Impact was permanent. Back at Nextra HQ in Atlanta, Ava gathered her core team, most of whom had been with her since the early days. No suits, no fluff, just sharp minds, strong hearts, and a mission that hadn't changed. If anything, the Fairchild fiasco had only sharpened their focus. They didn't need a billion-dollar safety net. What they needed was belief in their work, in their users, and in the future they were building. Instead of shrinking under the pressure, Nextra expanded. Within 2 months of the media storm, over 2.5 million new users joined the platform. Ava personally greenlit a new initiative to bring in more community advisors, real people from the neighborhoods they served. Single moms, first-time business owners, immigrants, young students. She didn't want to guess what the people needed. She wanted to listen. At the same time, Ava doubled down on her vision. She wasn't just running a fintech company anymore. She was building a new model for what leadership could look like, what ownership could mean. Too often, leaders from underserved communities were asked to be grateful for crumbs. Ava was teaching them to own the bakery. That's when she launched Nexera Uplift. The idea was simple: fund, mentor, and support women of color building mission-driven startups. Not just write checks, walk with them. Ava committed $25 million of Nexera's own profit. Not investor money, not PR cash, to seed 50 companies over the next 5 years. Her team called it a bold move. Ava called it overdue. Within weeks of announcing the initiative, over 6,000 applications flooded in. Ideas range from green tech to education platforms to healthcare access. But what connected them all was a hunger. The same hunger Ava once felt sitting in that borrowed office with 3 developers and a dream no one believed in. While the outside world continued to treat her as a symbol, Ava kept showing up to work like she always had. In meetings, she challenged her engineers to think deeper. In product reviews, she asked, "Does this make our users feel smarter or smaller?" She personally reviewed feedback from Nexera's lowest-income users. And every Friday, she held a 15-minute live-stream Q&A where anyone, yes, anyone, could ask her a question about leadership, tech, or purpose. It wasn't about being accessible for the cameras. It was about remembering who the platform was for. Internally, something began to shift. Other founders started following her lead. VC firms began funding more Black and brown-led startups, some even citing Ava as the reason. Universities that once passed her over for speaking gigs came calling. But Ava didn't want applause. She wanted results. One night, at a private tech summit in Los Angeles, a well-known investor asked her over dinner if she had any regrets about walking away from the Fairchild deal. She smiled. Then she leaned in and said, "Regret implies loss. I didn't lose a thing. I reclaimed everything." That quote would end up on t-shirts, coffee mugs, and laptop stickers. But Ava didn't care about that. She cared that one of the women in Nexera Uplift used it as her pitch opener when she closed her first $1 million round. The Fairchild Group, meanwhile, tried to recover. They pivoted, rebranded, and launched a flashy new fintech project with a white male founder and a rehashed version of Nexera's interface. It failed within 6 months. The public didn't bite. The trust was gone. Ava never spoke about them again. Not because she wasn't angry, but because she didn't need to prove anything to men who couldn't see past their own egos. Her success wasn't a response to them. It was a refusal to become them. And slowly, something even bigger began to happen. Young Black girls across the country started saying, "I want to be like Ava Johnson," not because she was rich, but because she walked away when it mattered most. Because she showed them that power doesn't come from a dollar sign. It comes from knowing who you are and never letting anyone put a price on your worth. The business world was watching, learning, and some changing. But Ava? She was already 10 steps ahead. Because when you lead with purpose, the destination isn't a finish line. It's a legacy. Months passed, and the noise began to settle. The headlines faded, the tweets slowed down, and the media moved on to its next obsession. But Ava Johnson? She was still building, still leading, still listening. Nexera had grown beyond anything she'd imagined when it started as a sketch on a whiteboard. It was now one of the most respected fintech platforms in the country. Not because it raised the most money or chased the flashiest headlines, but because it never forgot its people. The single mom trying to build credit. The immigrant father learning how to invest. The teenagers saving for college. Ava never let them become background statistics. They were always the reason. And through it all, she stayed rooted in the truth that had guided her from the very beginning. That real leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing when to walk out of the room altogether, with your head high and your dignity intact. One afternoon, during a quiet moment on the rooftop of her office building, Ava stood alone looking out over the Atlanta skyline. Her assistant came up with a tablet and said, "You might want to see this." It was a video. A young girl, maybe 12 years old, standing in front of her classroom, giving a school presentation about the woman who inspires me most. On the screen behind her was a single slide. Ava Johnson, founder and CEO of Nexera. The girl smiled nervously and began. She could have been rich, but instead, she chose to be right. Ava didn't say anything. She just nodded. A quiet tear rolled down her cheek. That moment meant more than any investment, any title, or any bank balance ever could. Because now, the mission had outgrown her. It was no longer just about Nexera. It was about a generation of future leaders, girls, women, black entrepreneurs, underestimated dreamers, who saw in her not just what was possible, but what was non-negotiable. She had proved that walking away isn't weakness, it's power. That turning down money doesn't mean failure, it means freedom. That saying no in the face of disrespect can be the most profitable decision you'll ever make, even if the profit isn't measured in dollars. And that's what makes Ava Johnson unforgettable. So to the billionaires who tried to buy her soul, and to anyone watching this wondering if standing up for your worth is worth the risk, remember her name. She didn't just make headlines. She made history. And if you ever find yourself at a table where you're not respected, do what Ava did. Get up and take your seat somewhere better. Because real power doesn't ask for permission. This is Moral Mirror, and we bring you true stories that reflect the strength, courage, and decisions that shape our world, even when the price is high.